is being recorded.
Hello, thank you everyone for joining the March 20th edition of the Gateway API meeting. Just a reminder, as always, this meeting is governed by the Kubernetes Code of Conduct, which effectively boils down to please be nice. So please be nice. We are continuing to try to do the attendees list because we're trying to keep up kind of checks on like what people are attending which meetings. So if you would please put your name and company down on the attendees list, we would appreciate it. We have a few things on the agenda today. Several of them are just little updates from me. So if you have anything that you want to bring up, you can still add it to the agenda while we're talking. Please feel free to put it below Philip Klatt's stuff and above mine if you want, because my things are kind of minor, so that we get to it sooner. But otherwise, we'll get started here. I'm going to share my screen. Okie doke. Hopefully you see my screen. First things first. Rob created the PR to add the contributor ladder. We're making it official. So just wanted to bring this one up to everybody's attention today, just that there's an actual PR for this. Please do jump in on the PR. It's 1844. Take a look at it. Make sure everything in there kind of reads right to you. If you have questions and stuff, add comments. Otherwise, this is what I think we're going to try to start with. This is obviously not like something that we merge this and then it's impossible to change. It's probably pretty easy to change soon after because we're kind of hoping for feedback. So check it out. Put comments. If you want changes, go ahead and put them in there. And in general, if you are interested in kind of an official role, even if it doesn't necessarily, actually almost especially if it doesn't necessarily fit into this, PM us and talk to us on Slack and stuff like that and let us know, because we'd be interested to understand if there's something we're missing here. So yeah, if there are no questions about that, we can move on. Nick, you look like you might have been talking, but I didn't hear you, so maybe, no? Okay. Go ahead. Philip wanted to talk about egress.
Yeah, one of my favorite topics. So we did create a new issue around egress. Shane pointed out that there was an ancient issue for egress that hadn't really been worked on. And of course, we, earlier shared a Google Doc with an outline of the kind of egress problems that we see and our product works on currently, and got quite a number of people who read it and gave feedback, which was great. And then I spent some time at Mobile World Congress, which was in, I don't know, a few weeks ago, also going over those same things with other people, including some members of this group, one member of this group, I guess, who are in the sort of service provider area who, agreed that it was the right set of sort of issues. And so we want to make sure that we keep it going. I am not 100% sure how the issue we created is different from a GEP issue, and maybe we need to put a tag on it or something else, or maybe it just is a GEP issue.
I marked it GEP.
Okay, good. I figured it needed a tag. And we are, so we're in the process of putting together some suggestions on what the modeling in Gateway API could look like for egress, and we'll be submitting those. Anybody else, I guess, who has stuff can add it. Is that the right process? Is that what we should be doing next?
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. We appreciate you because the old one was sitting around for a very long time, and appreciate you kind of jumping on it and starting to champion this. Is there somebody that should be assigned to it just so we know somebody's actively working on it?
I mean, we could assign, I don't know if Vinod's on here. He's the one who created the issue, so you could assign it to him. That's fair enough.
Oh, well. I mean, we can always take it off, but just because it
No.
sounds like you are actually immediately starting to think about this and stuff, it might be good to signal to anybody, because I put help on it. But we'll say, talked about this in the community meeting. There's active work. What should I say? Like, is he on your team?
Yes. And again, we've actually got a product that works in this space.
Yeah.
But we want to try and figure out a more standard way of solving these problems rather than just a ton of our, one-off CRD stuff.
Sounds good. All right. So he's kind of got a hold on it. Now, that doesn't mean anybody else who's interested can't jump in, but just to point out that somebody is actively working on this right now. So cool. Very cool. And then if you are interested, please do get in touch on this issue and kind of point out your interest in helping out with this.
We probably should tell Vinod, since you're back, that that you are now assigned to the egress case gap.
You've been assigned.
All right. Sounds good.
If you don't want to be assigned, we can change it, but
yeah, it's fine.
I think it'd be all right.
No, it's all good. I'll work with the guys, some other guys, and figure it out.
Sounds good. Cool. Thank you all for jumping on that.
Yeah, so I probably recommend to have a look at the new update I did to the GEP workflow page, the overview page. For this one, I think the important thing here is to sort of do the as Shane always says, do the what and the why before the how. So open a GEP PR and get the sort of the exactly, and get the sort of broad agreement that we're all on the same page about exactly what we're trying to do and why we're trying to do it. Because then that saves a lot of time when you come to the how, because then you don't have to keep going back and and that you don't have to keep going back and sort of restarting from scratch because someone brought up something that you missed in the initial round. For this specific one, sorry, I think John had something similar to say. So, and I think that, it's probably good to spend a bit of time trying to work on the use cases and make sure that we cover some of the stuff like layer 7 egress, which will be really important for mesh, as John says. So there's a couple of other things that I think we should do there. Make sure we hit the use cases first. I know the effort has been going slowly, but that's one of the things that's been really good about the TLS use cases doc, is sort of just gradually over time building up some use cases means that when it comes time to write the GEP, it's easier to sort of make sure you're covering all the things that someone's already written down.
So we did create a Google Doc with use cases, and through Slack we did a bunch of discussion on it, and people have looked at it. Should we be copying and pasting some of that out into the issue, or is it kind of okay
that might be fine? Like eventually getting into the gap would be good. Like making sure it's all in that one place.
So maybe
whether
I don't
you do that immediately.
Is the GEP a document? Is the GEP a...
Yeah, a GEP is like a cap.
I don't understand.
Are you familiar with cap? If
So
not, that's totally fine.
Pretend I'm not.
Okay.
I think the canonical representation of the GEP is a markdown file that lives in a specific directory in the Gateway API repo. Using a Google Doc to sort of brainstorm and get a rough outline done is the way to go. And then there is a template in the GEPs directory at the top level in the repo that sort of has all the sections we need you to fill out. And if you have a look at some of the other ones, then you'll sort of see the sorts of stuff that we try and put in there. And I think that's sort of a good target to aim for, and that's what we're saying is the initial PR of that should be it's effectively the sort of the goals, the introduction, the goals and non-goals, the introduction and the background. And that's sort of that's what we're looking for here. Sorry, you go, Bowie.
Yeah, I just thanks for covering the GEP process. Sorry, is my audio working? Okay, looks like it's working. I did take a look at that doc, and I think before you cut and paste it into a GEP, you might want to like crystallize it into a more generic statement. So I think the doc is like a really good list of like lots of use cases, but I think it's less clear what like the upstream generic thing would look like. So just to save you a ton of time, like if you just cut and paste the doc into a proposal, it might get a ton of comments.
Yeah, don't do
So
that. Don't cut and paste the whole
effort.
thing. I agree. Don't cut and paste the whole thing in. I think the first thing should be try to reduce the number of actual things we need to agree on for every PR. Better to have more PRs that can move faster because we don't get stuck in very nested comment structures. We just focus on the specific things we need to agree on, like what are the goals? Get that merged and then move on to like, how are we going to meet those goals? And then along the way, you can sprinkle in things from your doc. And we can work with you on this, but really just don't worry too much about like, I agree with Bobby. Don't dump the whole doc into the GEP. We can use it for reference and kind of build up to it. Does that make sense? Kind of an iterative process towards just building consensus at little steps along the way until just making sure everybody's on board, making pivots where needed. Okay.
Sure. When
possible. I mean, obviously it's kind of not a hard and fast rule, but it'll make things smoother because if you do too much at once, you'll see it in just about every GEP that is in our PR history. They can take a long time to move. So
yeah, once you get over like 250 comments on a PR, it starts getting hard to like keep track of who's asked for what and if it's done.
Is that one hitting close to home for you, Nick?
Yeah.
And that's why
I have the policy update GEP PR currently has about 260 comments.
Yeah, that's intense. And that's why we have this proposal like progress, basically like statuses. It starts with provisional. We just recently added prototyping, which is kind of an extension of provisional where you prototype and use that as a part of what feeds back into the GEP, like what you actually write down as opposed to just doing all the design up front. And then experimental and standard. So there's a progression. You can have as many PRs in any of these stages as you want, etc. Hopefully that doesn't overcomplicate things. Hopefully that's making it clear. But if you have any questions, reach out to us on Slack and we can kind of help out. And probably provide a couple of examples of like GEPs that in smaller iterations to show you like exactly how small you can go. Cool. All right. That is awesome. We appreciate you all working on that. If there are no lingering questions, I don't see any hands raised, then we can move on to the next topic. Okay. There are some chat comments. Okay, I think they're just related to trying to make GEPs a little smoother. All right. I have a couple of things to highlight. Again, if anybody else has anything to jump in here with, we're only at 17 minutes after the hour. Please do feel free to drop things on here. We have this issue, which it's mostly just about raising it to everyone. Oh, sorry, this PR, there's a relevant issue. I put a hold on this because, okay, so basically what this is doing is we added a conformance test that came with a feature that said support gateway class observed generation bump. And if you enabled that feature, then your gateway classes would be conformant, would have to kind of update all their status conditions to show that they've seen the most recent version of the object with every update. My interpretation after seeing this, like actually having merged already like this, was that we actually want that to be a core thing. Like we want that to be something everybody has to do. And I think that has been the interpretation of many people, but we didn't merge this because we know that there may be some people that this would kind of get them. So we wanted to provide some time and like kind of bring this up to people and let them know we're thinking about, we're basically aiming at making this core. So please do take a look. If that rings a bell for you, if you're working on implementing conformance or rather implementing controllers for your gateways and gateway classes and stuff, and yours does not kind of deal with keeping track of the most recent updates to the object and updating that and reflecting that in the statuses, start thinking about that, take a look at this issue. And we won't do it super suddenly. We're going to kind of wait and let this one soak for a bit.
Yeah, so on a related note, I'm just putting one in the chat. There's another one that I did a while ago that I'm intending to update the implementers guide with some information about like what we expect implementations to watch. The big ones are those two there. It's expected that you'll watch all gateway classes and then you'll do something with any of the gateway classes that you have the controller name that you've picked for your controller. Maybe you might only accept one of them. Maybe you might accept more than one. But like the idea is that you watch them and you update the status of all of them. And that's what this is sort of, moving this conformance test to core will codify that into a requirement. You won't be able to just specify a gateway class by name or something like that, or not have a gateway class. So that's probably the part that I think might be a little bit controversial that we need to talk about, and so that's why we're trying to poke this up to everyone's attention. So yeah, the hope I've written a bunch of notes there already about stuff that I think it's really that we expect that implementations will do, because I don't think we've done a good. I think it's certainly implied in many of the places in the documentation, but we've never written it down explicitly.
Roger that. Don't see any hands raised, so we'll move on unless somebody has something they want to add on. Okay. This is just another call out. We have, when I say we, I think it's pretty much Arco, Sanjay, Mattia, and myself have kind of been working on the GEP, and there's a prototype started for conformance profiles. If you haven't seen it, I should probably actually, I have the website open. It's here, 1709. And there's a little bit of code that's behind a build tag right now, an experimental build tag that's getting started. And it is my intention, one of my main focuses right now, to kind of get to the point where we have some working prototype. We can start to run conformance profiles, or rather run the conformance tests with profiles, and then receive conformance reports and see how that starts looking and shaping up. Everything that you see in here is subject to change. It's in prototyping stage. But what I did want to do is just highlight it again for people in case they weren't aware of it, and also kind of make a general call out for testing. I have 2 people who are interested in kind of being early testers and like help with the development and testing cycles of this during the prototyping stage. If you have the time for that kind of thing, please do reach out to me on Slack, Kubernetes Slack, and say so. I'd be happy to kind of join you into the loop here. We talked about it a little bit at the Code Jam on Friday, which I think is okay, but that one's anyway. Just reach out if you have like. I don't want the conformance profile stuff to end up in the Code Jam, but we did like kind of go down that trail a little bit on Friday. We try to keep that mostly open and up in the air here, so everybody can see what's going on. So yeah, just reach out if you're interested in that. No hands. Just to follow up on the Code Jam. So we had a couple of interesting discussions. The Code Jams have been going well. If you guys aren't familiar with the Code Jam, it's just a Friday meeting. It's called SIG Network Gateway API Code Jam that we've been doing. It started as just a place to kind of focus on our Blix project a little bit and like talk about conformance, talk about eBPF. Like it was kind of just general and kind of a hangout. It's been going well. And in fact, there's been some kind of intense discussions there, which I put some notes about. And just wanted to kind of bring some of those forward. There is some interest from Gabor, who I don't think he's in here, but he did Stunner, and several weeks ago he did a really nice presentation for us on Stunner, which uses UDP route, but on top of that always has uses turn. And he brought up some interesting discussions about wanting to potentially be able to express tunnels with Gateway API in time, and do things like express the transport layers below L7 routes. So this is a discussion that we're going to continue to follow up on, possibly like within the Code Jam, but we'll bubble it up here. But it's something that's interesting, and if you are interested in that sort of thing, that might be a reason for you to kind of join that meeting, or for us to think about where we're going to do those kinds of discussions, because that is a little outside of the normal like pairing that we had been doing previously. Either way, it was interesting, and you should see some more updates on that, possibly in time, a GEP, if the use case really starts to bubble up and he really wants to champion it forward. So that was just a little bit of interesting stuff related to L4 functionality and what's going on with Stunner, which is kind of probably our most unique implementation. And then eBPF, which has also been a very big topic at the Code Jams, is kind of starting to break out into its own things because it often takes up most of the time. So we actually, on a related note, BPFD is now an available channel in Slack. If you're not familiar, it is the BPF program loader that we're going to be using in our Blix project for Gateway API. There's now a channel for that. So if you're interested, just wanted to point that out. But if you're interested generally in eBPF, I think this kind of is starting to get outside of the realm of Gateway API. So I think as a general SIG network thing, we might be looking at doing something like some kind of community get together thing related to eBPF. We're working on that. If you're interested, please reach out on Slack and kind of let us know, and we'll kind of keep you in the loop. All right. Triage is all we have left then. I pulled triage issues that like literally we say like needs triage or triage needs more information on them. If you have anything that I might have missed, please feel free to drop it in here. We're going to continue to do some, the backlog is huge right now. So, so this isn't even close, but I figured we can get started with some of these. Looks like somebody's changing something. Did somebody have something to bring up? Okay, never mind. All right, first thing for triage. Remove min items, limit of listeners in Gateway.
Thanks. I should say thanks for adding in the previous discussion link, John. See, this has come up before in PR that John opened to make Gateway listeners optional. Sadly, this is one of those ones where it's kind of a breaking change because if you make a field that was previously required optional, now every implementation that expects it to be required needs to be updated for it to possibly be optional. And so, like, I think I can understand what people are asking for is, hey, I'd like to be able to make listeners optional in a gateway so that I can create the gateway and have the infrastructure creation bits happen before we start defining config. And I don't dispute that that's a very useful thing to have happen, but now it's been around for a while. It's already in we're in beta and on our way to GA, and this is a breaking API change that would require an API revision. So yeah, it kind of sucks, but I don't see any way that we can do this safely at this point. It could be that we can write some docs about how, if you want to do the sort of the create a gateway, maybe we can define a standard sort of null listener or something like that and say, if you create a listener with this, then that means this listener should be disregarded, like a specific name or something like that. I don't know. But this is one of those API design things where sometimes you don't get to undo things that you built, sadly. Okay.
So I guess the question then becomes for Woodgear. They want this. We could dig in a little bit further to understand why. And kind of lead towards closing it unless they can make a really, really strong case.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll do that kind of async. I'll follow up on this and kind of move it into like needs information and just kind of keep pushing it, but ultimately kind of letting them know that we're we would close it unless they have something really big to kind of bring to the discussion. So
yeah.
Don't see any raised hands. Arco says, programmatically cruding.
I totally understand how it's useful, but like the fact is it requires an API revision, and unless everybody feels like writing their controller so that it handles v1 beta 1 of gateway and v2 alpha 1 of gateway and all of the associated things in between, like we're kind of stuck. So Bowie.
Yeah, I think like some of what you've suggested, Nick, we should drop in the comments just to say like, hey, maybe there's like a sentinel value you could use, like as the way forward.
Yeah, agreed. I think that, yeah, if there's some sort of sentinel value that we could, say, hey, we're all going to agree that a listener with this specific name, like, I mean, we have, I don't remember I think the name field might be optional as well or something, but I mean, maybe that's a way we can say, hey, there's an optional name field. And if you set the optional name field to this specific name, then that means it's it is a inoperative listener that is just there as a placeholder, or something like that. So yeah.
That's just me typing fast. I'll clean those notes up and make a decent comment when we're done. Yep.
I think pretty much all of these things are things where I have already commented on them. So let's continue.
Yeah, it's just moving the comments around.
Yep.
All right. Cool. Didn't see any other hands up. Moving on to the next one. So I'll grab that one. This one's not ringing a bell. Listener name must be unique within. Oh, I did see this one. Listener name must be unique within a gateway. Looks like Nick, you posted on this one.
Yes, I think we have this rule, but we don't have any way to enforce it. So in order to have this rule be enforced, someone needs to add it to the validation webhook.
Okay.
That's it.
Let me double check it here real quick. Yeah, okay. Yep, seems pretty straightforward.
Shane, this is Damien. You could assign this to me.
Sweet. Thank you. Appreciate that.
I think this one,
PR is already out.
Oh,
Okay. There is a PR for this already somewhere?
Yeah.
If you scroll down.
Yeah, hang on. I think I saw it actually by the same person. Okay.
oh
So we'll
nice.
call this one accepted.
Cool.
Or rather, we'll just give it a priority here. It is in progress already. And in theory, it'll make it into 070 if that merges fairly soon. So let's just go ahead and call it that. And then I'll check that PR out later. So that one's done. Do appreciate you jumping up to take that one though. All right. This one has been floating around for a minute. I think we're just kind of like talking about it.
Yeah, it needs just a little bit more feedback from people about what they'd like to see. So this is everyone saying, hey, it'd be nice to be able to contribute. It'd be nice to be able to contribute. To have some way for you to define whether, like, what should happen with gzip for the listener. Many proxies let you automatically sort of decode and encode and force gzipping. In fact, on Contour, when we always just, as Arco says down below, we always unconditionally, for a long time, we just unconditionally enabled gzip because it's like, well, it's a negotiation. If your browser doesn't support it, then it won't do it. And so, yeah, we had a pretty strong opinion there. So I think it just feels like we just need some more implementations and stuff to talk about if they think that's valuable. The thing I'm worried about is it's a pretty specific little knob. And where do we put it, and how does this sort of add a precedent of us adding very, very specific little twiddlables on a gateway? Should this be in the the sort of mooted infrastructure stanza that we've been talking about a little bit? Or how should we represent this is the sort of question that I want to leave open.
Yeah, I think this one needs to be addressed as like a more generic, not just for gzip, because I'm looking like HB2 has HPAC. There's other compression protocols out there. Like, we probably need to think about this in a more general way, because gzip itself isn't relevant in every single case.
Yeah, Arco, did you have something to say there?
Yeah, I was curious if any thought has been given to the notion of listener filters. It's the same way you have route filters.
Sorry, I missed that.
So today there is the notion of filters at the route level. Has the team considered the notion of filters at a listener level?
Not really, I don't think. I don't think we've ever really talked about that before. I think I guess that is a way that you could model it. I'd kind of want to, again, being able to add filters at a listener level at this point is kind of it's a sort of a bit of a conceptual change. How do the filters at the listener level interact with the filters at the route level? There would need to be sort of quite a bit of definition work put in there to sort of say, how, if you have the same filter at different levels, and a bunch of other sort of specky kind of things like that. And that is a good point that we haven't discussed before, I guess.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah.
Do you have anything that you'd want to add as like another comment here, Argo? Just kind of talking about that.
I think exploring listener filters, but that, like as Nick has already alluded to, is a massive change in talking about how it interacts with the other child filters in the route. So,
indeed,
yeah.
I think Bowie's call out for, okay, you want this. This probably, it would seem a good generic way to do this as opposed to being very specific about gzip. So it seems like the next step here is to kind of talk to Ilwan a little bit more and kind of point out, hey, is this something that do you have other things or other algorithms that you need to actually apply here that this could be done in a generic way? Are you interested in starting a gap around this? That kind of thing is a conversation that I can push forward. But it doesn't seem like we're quite ready to say that this is accepted yet. But if it does get accepted, I guess it will probably need to be a gap. So so anyway, I mumbled a little bit there, but my whole point is I'll follow up on this one too with some questions to kind of keep the conversation going, but also push in the direction more of like, we probably need to make this something a little bit more generic, make a small gap for it, etc. Sound good?
Thanks, Shane.
John, did you want to say something?
Sorry,
John.
I just recovered, so I was unmuted. I didn't have something to say.
Okay. Cool. All right, so I'll follow up on those two. Is there one more here? Or was there two more? Did I miss one? Double check. Okay, no, just the one more. Okay, so the last one we have on the agenda here is for triage is match multiple methods in HTTP route. And this one's been sitting for a minute. So
I think this one is a classic one where you need to add a plural field. There's API changes docs upstream about the right way to do this. The TLDR is it's a bit complicated because there's certain semantics you need to expect about if you add a plural field and a singular field still exists, then it's kind of expected that if you set the singular field, then you also set the first element in the plural list. And if you set the first element in the plural list and only the first element, then it gets copied back to the singular field and a few other things like that. Not in the end of the world, we can do it, but it'll need an implementation plan to be done in such a way as to not be, is to not actually be a breaking API change.
Okay. What do you think we should do?
I'll dig up the API changes docs section and put it in another comment on that issue.
Okay, thank you. Cool. I guess then we'll continue to follow up on that. And if somebody's feeling really strongly about it, we can maybe make that one happen. All right. That's all I had on the triage thing for today. We still technically have 20 minutes left. If anybody has a last minute thing they want to bring up, including an issue that they want to look over real quick, we could do that. Otherwise, we can give everybody 20 minutes of their time back. Give it a second. Cool. Thank you, everybody. Until next time. Cheers.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.